Дякую, хлопці, слава Україні.
What happens when the sky itself becomes a weapon, when there is no rear, no cover, and no moment that truly feels safe? Near Pokrovsk in eastern Ukraine, that question no longer belongs to military theorists. It belongs to soldiers crouched in trenches, drivers gripping steering wheels, and men frozen in open fields as a mechanical buzz grows louder overhead. The scene unfolds without warning. Two Russian soldiers cross a wide exposed field and drop into a trench believing overhead cover offers safety. From above, a Ukrainian FPV drone has already locked on. The shelter is visible. The bodies are visible. Seconds later, the strike arrives with clinical precision. One soldier is killed instantly. The other tries deception, lying still feigning unconsciousness. It does not work. The drone returns. There is no hesitation, no negotiation with chance. The air decides. This is the new normal near Pokrovsk. Ukrainian drone units patrol the air like hunters, assigning individual FPVs to individual targets. Each soldier becomes a coordinate. Each movement leaves a signature. Trenches, trees, abandoned buildings, traditional places of refuge have become traps. Visibility from the air collapses the old hierarchy of the battlefield, where distance once meant safety and rear areas meant survival. The strikes do not stop at infantry. Russian UAV operators sheltering in a dugout are identified and eliminated in rapid succession. Ammunition stored inside detonates repeatedly, secondary explosions rippling through the position. What once would have required artillery coordination or air support now happens through a single operator, a screen, and a drone that costs a fraction of a missile. Warfare accelerates, compresses, and becomes intimate in a way that is almost unsettling. Motorcycles appear next, used by Russian forces for speed and flexibility and adaptation to avoid larger vehicles that attract attention, but speed offers no protection from eyes in the sky. Supplies never reach the front. Riders are intercepted mid-route, erased from the battlefield before they can dismount. The logic is ruthless. Anything that moves is a target. Anything that stops is observed until it moves again or is destroyed. Then come the vehicles. Trucks loaded with troops, fuel, and ammunition form the backbone of any offensive push. Near Pokrovsk, that backbone is systematically broken. A fuel truck is struck. Its crew flees in panic. One escapes, one does not. An ammunition truck absorbs an initial hit and keeps moving, only to be followed, tracked, and struck again just meters from its destination. The cargo ignites. The mission fails. The truck is abandoned. Logistics, not frontline heroics, decide outcomes here. The opening scenes near Pokrovsk reveal more than tactical success. They reveal a battlefield stripped of illusion. There is no dramatic charge, no decisive clash of formations. Instead, there is surveillance patience and sudden violence delivered from above. The sound of drones replaces artillery thunder. The pause between strikes becomes a psychological weapon in itself. This is not chaos, it is a system, a methodical dismantling of movement supply and morale, and it raises a disturbing question that will echo throughout this conflict and beyond. If the sky belongs to machines, what space is left for human error or human survival? The battlefield around Pokrovsk reveals a deeper shift that goes beyond individual strikes. What is unfolding is not simply the use of drones as support weapons, but the rewriting of ground warfare itself. Movement, concealment, and mass, once the foundations of land combat, are being systematically dismantled by persistent aerial presence and precision attacks. Russian troops adapt constantly, yet each adaptation seems to generate a new vulnerability. Soldiers spread out to avoid clustered casualties only to be individually hunted. They shelter under trees, inside dugouts, beneath camouflage nets, each solution exposed by high-resolution cameras and patient operators. Even pretending to be dead becomes a gamble, as FPV pilots verify targets with cold certainty before committing to a second strike. The battlefield has no fog anymore, only angles. What makes these operations particularly devastating is their focus on logistics and preparation rather than dramatic frontline breakthroughs. Ukrainian drones strike not at symbols but at systems. Supply runs on motorcycles are intercepted. Fuel trucks are disabled before reaching units that depend on them. Ammunition vehicles are hit just short of delivery points, rendering entire offensive plans meaningless in seconds. A unit without fuel does not maneuver. A unit without ammunition does not fight. A unit without mobility dissolves. In one sequence, a Russian soldier hides beneath a tree, firing blindly at the approaching drone. The attempt is desperate and futile. Accuracy favors the machine. Elsewhere, a dugout thought to be concealed is identified and neutralized. These are not random encounters. They reflect a layered intelligence process pattern, recognition, previous traffic observation, and timing. Ukrainian operators do not rush. They wait for confirmation for value for maximum effect. Armored vehicles tell a different but equally revealing story. An abandoned Russian tank is spotted days after its crew fled. Ukrainian FPV pilots test its resilience. One strike hits, the armor holds, another follows from the side, still intact. A third fails to achieve catastrophic damage. The decision is immediate and pragmatic: abandon the tank as a target. Armor still matters, but only enough to redirect effort towards softer, more decisive objectives. Precision warfare is selective. Efficiency outweighs symbolism. This selectivity exposes a critical imbalance. Russia fields large quantities of equipment and manpower, but the ability to protect and supply them is eroding under constant drone pressure. Ukrainian FPV units operate as decentralized strike cells capable of independent decision-making. There is no need for large formations or prolonged engagements. Each drone represents a calculated trade, minimal cost, maximum disruption. Even Russian drone assets are not immune. Several FPVs are destroyed before launch identified on the ground and eliminated preemptively. Each destroyed drone is more than equipment lost, it is a Ukrainian life potentially saved. This is counter-drone warfare unfolding in real time, with air superiority contested at meters above the ground. What emerges from Pokrovsk is a battlefield where dominance is measured not in territory seized, but in movement denied. Roads become liabilities, forests become monitored corridors, rear areas vanish as meaningful concepts. War compresses inward, forcing soldiers into a shrinking bubble of uncertainty. The lesson is brutal and clear: in modern combat, survival depends less on where forces stand and more on whether they can remain unseen. And near Pokrovsk, invisibility is becoming impossible. The destruction near Pokrovsk is not accidental. It reflects a deeper strategic collision between two fundamentally different ways of fighting. On one side stands a force built on precision, adaptability, and relentless surveillance. On the other, a military still structured around mass armor and attrition. The clash between these approaches is shaping not just this front, but the trajectory of the war itself. Russia's strategy continues to rely on numerical pressure waves of infantry-heavy equipment and constant probing attacks designed to exhaust defenders over time. In theory, armor absorbs punishment, infantry advances under fire, and logistics follow behind. In practice, that chain breaks when every link is visible from above. Ukrainian FPV drones do not need to destroy everything. They only need to disrupt enough to halt momentum. A single disabled fuel truck can stall an entire battalion. A destroyed ammunition carrier can silence multiple units without a firefight. The abandoned tank outside Pokrovsk becomes a telling symbol. Its armor withstands multiple FPV strikes, demonstrating that heavy protection still has value. But value does not equal relevance. Ukrainian operators recognize that destroying the tank is unnecessary if its crew has already fled and its fuel lines, supply routes, and nearby infantry are neutralized. This is not a failure of firepower, it is a success of prioritization. Precision warfare is about choosing which battles not to fight. This approach contrasts sharply with attritional logic. Russian forces often accept losses as a cost of progress, betting that sustained pressure will eventually overwhelm Ukrainian defenses. Drone warfare undermines that calculus. Losses are no longer confined to assault troops. They extend to drivers, UAV operators, mechanics, and supply runners' roles traditionally considered safer. The battlefield expands vertically, pulling everyone into the kill zone. Electronic warfare enters the equation as both shield and vulnerability. A large hangar discovered near the front, masked by camouflage netting and recent vehicle traffic, promises a major prize. FPV drones converge. As they approach, signal loss confirms the presence of Russian electronic countermeasures. Yet adaptation follows immediately. A fiber optic drone immune to jamming flies in. Some targets survive, others are critically damaged. The exchange illustrates a new arms race measured in weeks, not decades. The strategic effect of these encounters is cumulative. Russian units are forced to move at night, disperse supplies, and shorten routes. Each adjustment slows operations and increases friction. Meanwhile, Ukrainian forces gain time to fortify, rotate units, and preserve manpower. Precision buys endurance. This imbalance raises uncomfortable questions about sustainability. Mass can absorb losses, but morale cannot. Soldiers traveling by motorcycle or truck now understand they may be individually hunted. There is no anonymity in numbers when each movement can be isolated and destroyed. Fear becomes a force multiplier, shaping behavior long before contact is made. Near Pokrovsk, the battle is not decided by a single breakthrough or retreat. It is decided by arithmetic, cheap drones versus expensive logistics, seconds of flight versus hours of preparation, one operator versus an entire supply chain. In this equation, the side that learns faster, adapts quicker, and wastes less holds the advantage. And for now, precision is winning that race. What is unfolding near Pokrovsk is not an anomaly, it is a preview. The same logic, cheap precision overpowering expensive mass, is quietly reshaping conflicts far beyond eastern Ukraine. From the Middle East to the Indo-Pacific militaries are watching closely, drawing conclusions that will redefine how power is projected and resisted in the years ahead. In Ukraine, FPV drones hunt truck soldiers and shelters. In the Middle East, similar systems have already blurred the line between state and non-state power. Iranian-backed groups have demonstrated how low-cost drones and loitering munitions can penetrate air defenses, strike strategic infrastructure, and impose political pressure without triggering full-scale war. Israel's response layered air defenses, electronic warfare. Rapid intelligence fusion mirrors the same contest seen near Pokrovsk: detection versus adaptation, signal versus silence. The United States is not exempt from these lessons. As Washington recalibrates its global posture under President Donald Trump in 2025, American planners increasingly recognize that traditional dominance aircraft carriers, armored brigades, massive logistics hubs faces a new vulnerability. In a potential US-China confrontation, particularly around Taiwan, the opening phase would likely resemble Pokrovsk more than Desert Storm. Swarms of drones, precision strikes on ports and fuel depots, relentless pressure on supply chains rather than dramatic battlefield clashes. China has studied Ukraine carefully. Its investments in drone swarming, electronic warfare, and space-based surveillance reflect a belief that future wars will be decided before conventional forces fully engage. The logic is simple: deny movement, blind command structures, and exhaust the opponent without offering clear targets in return. Ukraine's FPV campaign offers a real-world case study of that theory in action. What makes Pokrovsk especially instructive is the speed of adaptation. When electronic jamming disrupts FPVs, fiber optic drones appear. When armor proves resilient, attention shifts to logistics. This constant cycle mirrors global competition, where advantage is temporary and innovation is mandatory. Military power is no longer static, it is iterative. For Western democracies, this shift creates a deeper dilemma. Precision warfare promises fewer large-scale battles and potentially fewer civilian casualties, yet it also lowers the threshold for violence. When strikes are cheap, deniable, and remote, the temptation to use them grows. Conflict becomes persistent rather than decisive, an endless series of calculated blows delivered below the level of formal war. Near Pokrovsk, that reality is already visible. There is no front line in the traditional sense, only monitored space, only movement judged and punished. The same pattern now stretches across borders and regions, binding Ukraine's fight to a global transformation and how wars begin escalate and refuse to end. The question is no longer whether drones will shape future conflicts. They already are. The real question is whether any major power can still protect its people, its forces, and its freedom once the sky itself becomes a contested battlefield everywhere at once. Behind the precision strikes and strategic calculations lies a quieter, heavier truth. Every drone hit carries a human consequence that no technology can erase. Near Pokrovsk, the victims are not anonymous symbols on a map. They are drivers, operators, runners, and soldiers making split-second decisions in an environment where hesitation can be fatal. A truck driver sees the drone too late. He jumps from the cab and runs. The camera follows. One man escapes the blast radius. Another does not. In a different strike, soldiers face an impossible choice. After an FPV detonates near their vehicle, leave a wounded comrade behind or abandon the mission entirely. These moments never appear in official communiques, yet they shape the battlefield more than any press release. Drone warfare compresses fear. There is no warning salvo, no rising artillery barrage. Death arrives as a sudden mechanical whine. Soldiers learn to distrust stillness and motion alike. Hiding under a tree feels as dangerous as crossing an open field. Lying still may invite a second strike. The psychological toll compounds with every sortie. Motorcycle units illustrate this reality with brutal clarity. Chosen for speed and flexibility, they represent an attempt to reclaim control in a monitored environment. Instead, they become some of the most exposed targets. Riders understand the odds. They ride anyway. That knowledge of near-certain detection erodes morale long before casualties appear on paper. The human cost extends beyond those struck. Drone operators on both sides witness destruction in high definition. Distance does not mean detachment. Seeing a target hesitate, run, or freeze before impact creates its own moral burden. Modern warfare forces individuals to confront violence intimately, even when separated by kilometers. For civilians near the front, the effect is equally corrosive. Roads once used for evacuation or aid now double as military routes and drone corridors. Any movement risks misinterpretation. The line between combatant and bystander blurs not by intent but by visibility. Near Pokrovsk, the battlefield teaches a harsh lesson. Technology does not remove suffering, it redistributes it. Precision reduces randomness, but it concentrates pressure on individuals. Each soldier becomes singularly vulnerable. Each mistake becomes final. As this war grinds on, the question is no longer how many systems can be deployed, but how many people on all sides can endure a conflict where the sky never looks away. The battles near Pokrovsk point toward a future where power is no longer measured by how much force a nation can deploy, but by how intelligently it can apply restraint, protection, and precision. This shift carries profound implications for global security and for America's strategic prestige in a world where dominance is increasingly fragile. Under President Donald Trump in 2025, Washington faces a dilemma mirrored on this Ukrainian battlefield. The United States still commands unmatched conventional strength, yet Pokrovsk demonstrates how even the most powerful militaries can be weakened by low-cost systems that attack visibility, logistics, and morale. Aircraft carriers, armored brigades, and forward bases remain symbols of power, but symbols are vulnerable when supply lines flicker under constant threat. The deeper tension lies between security and freedom. Drone warfare promises control, constant surveillance, targeted strikes, reduced risk to one's own forces, but it also normalizes permanent monitoring and remote violence. When every movement can be observed and judged from the sky, freedom of action shrinks for soldiers and civilians alike. The battlefield becomes a laboratory for methods that could one day shape domestic security, border control, and global policing. Near Pokrovsk, prestige is not earned through dramatic victories. It is earned through endurance, through denying the enemy momentum, through protecting one's own people while forcing the adversary to expend far more than they gain. This logic now defines modern deterrence. It is quiet, incremental, and deeply unsettling. As global powers adapt, the line between war and peace grows thinner. Precision lowers the political cost of violence, making it easier to sustain conflict without resolution. The danger is not escalation alone, but normalization, a world where war never truly ends, only simmers. The final question hangs unresolved if future wars are fought everywhere all the time through machines that never tire and eyes that never blink. How does any society preserve its humanity while still defending itself? Near Pokrovsk, Ukrainian FPV drone operations reveal a decisive transformation in modern warfare. Precision, persistence, and surveillance now outweigh mass armor and traditional maneuver. Russian forces, whether infantry in trenches, drivers in trucks, or operators in rear areas, are exposed by an aerial battlefield where concealment has lost its meaning. Logistics, not territory, become the primary targets, collapsing entire operations without major engagements. This pattern extends far beyond Ukraine. From the Middle East to potential US-China flashpoints, low-cost drones are reshaping deterrence, lowering the threshold for conflict while increasing its duration. Electronic warfare and rapid adaptation accelerate an arms race measured in weeks rather than years. Yet beneath the technology lies a heavy human toll. Soldiers face constant fear, impossible choices, and psychological strain. Civilians live under skies that never look away. Precision does not eliminate suffering, it concentrates it. For global powers, including the United States under President Trump, Pokrovsk offers a warning. Strategic prestige in the modern era depends less on overwhelming force and more on resilience, restraint, and the ability to protect human life in a permanently monitored world.